The Galactic Council was a powerful entity, and when its members spoke, entire worlds listened. So when Tarek, a high-ranking council member, sent a message to Earth, it was nothing short of a warning. The people of Earth had no idea that their first contact with the galaxy would come with such a chilling demand. Tarek's voice echoed through the communication channels, clear and cold. This is a message to Earth. You are no longer free to exist as you please. Submit to the Galactic Council or face destruction. He spoke with such authority, it seemed impossible that anyone could defy him. But as the humans gathered in their embassy, the tension was palpable. This wasn't just a diplomatic message, it was a threat. Captain Alina Carter, head of Earth's first military response team, stood in the center of the room, her mind racing. Tarek wasn't just any council member, he was one of the most powerful figures in the galaxy. If he said the Earth would be destroyed, they had no choice but to listen, didn't they? But Alina wasn't so sure. She had always believed that humanity had something the galaxy couldn't foresee. Resilience. She glanced at her team, composed of diplomats and military strategists, their faces a mix of worry and determination. We need a plan, she said, her voice steady. We can't just roll over and let them do this. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. How could they fight against a power like that? How could they stand up to the very force that controlled the galaxy? But Alina, with her calm resolve, refused to accept the idea of surrender. We may be outnumbered, and we may not have the same power as the Council, but we have something they don't, our will. We have the power to surprise them. The diplomats exchanged uneasy glances. What exactly do you propose, Captain? One of them asked, still unsure of what could be done. Alina turned to the large holographic map that hovered in front of them, displaying the strategic locations of the Council's ships and planets. We'll fight back, not through brute force, but by showing them what humanity is capable of. We won't go down without a fight. Her words struck a chord with the room. The humans of Earth had survived countless hardships, wars, disasters, and even their own mistakes. Why should they fear an alien race? It was time to prove that humans could stand up to any challenge. The decision was made. The first step in humanity's response was clear. They would not bow to the Galactic Council. They would fight for their right to exist. As Tarek's message finished, the tension in the room didn't ease. If anything, it grew heavier. The threat had been made. Now, it was up to humanity to show the galaxy what they were truly made of. The first battle of Earth's future had begun, and humanity was not about to back down. Tarek, the proud council member, sat comfortably in his vast chamber on the Galactic Council's flagship. His thoughts were focused entirely on the expansion of his influence, certain that Earth would bow to the overwhelming power of the Council. He had already sent the threat, the ultimatum for Earth to submit, and he believed the humans would comply, just as countless other civilizations had before them. He couldn't understand why Earth hadn't immediately surrendered. The Galactic Council controlled the universe, and no planet could stand against them for long. They will come to their senses soon enough, Tarek muttered to himself. The arrogance that ran through his veins was as thick as the air in his chamber. Around him, his advisors and aides worked silently, but Tarek hardly noticed them. His eyes were fixed on a holographic display showing Earth's defenses. He chuckled darkly, brushing off any concern. Their fleet is weak. Their technology primitive compared to ours. What could they possibly do? He said, shaking his head. But as confident as Tarek was in his position, there was a nagging feeling at the back of his mind. The humans were unpredictable. There was something about them that was different. But he quickly silenced the thought. If they hadn't surrendered yet, it was simply because they hadn't realized the consequences of resisting. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Alina Carter and her team were preparing to launch their strike. Their stealth ships, cloaked from sight, silently approached the massive Galactic Council relay station. They had one shot at this. If they failed, it could mean the end of humanity's hope to stand against the Council. Alina stood at the helm of the lead ship, Her eyes narrowed as she watched the station grow larger on the screen. It was a sprawling facility, its shimmering surface betraying no sign of the danger it held. Around her, the crew remained focused, knowing the risk they were about to take. "Ready, Captain," Lieutenant Harper called out. His fingers hovered over the controls, waiting for her command. "On my mark," Alina replied, her voice steady. The moment was tense. Every officer aboard the fleet knew what was at stake. If they could disable the Council's communications network, they would have the upper hand. But the risk of failure was high. If the Council discovered their presence too soon, it could mean disaster. The countdown began, and for a brief moment, everything felt suspended in time. Then Alina gave the command. Now. In an instant, the fleet surged forward, moving swiftly and silently toward the relay station. Tarek, still oblivious to the human threat, was too busy basking in his perceived victory to notice the approach of the fleet. But suddenly, a sharp beep echoed in the control room of Tarek's flagship. One of his advisors looked up, alarmed. "Sir, we're receiving an anomaly in the communications network. A breach. Someone's trying to hack in." Tarek froze. His smile faltered for the first time in a long while. A strange feeling washed over him, something he hadn't experienced in years. Doubt. "Impossible," he muttered. His arrogance had blinded him to the humans' capabilities. Now, it was too late to stop them. The small fleet of advanced warships sat hidden in Earth's orbit, its sleek and stealthy designs a testament to human ingenuity. They weren't big, but they were fast and nearly invisible. These ships had been built in record time, pushed into existence by the urgent need to show the Galactic Council that humanity would not bend to threats. Captain Alina Carter stood in front of a massive screen, watching as the engineers made final adjustments to the ships. Each one was equipped with the latest technology, cloaking devices, weapons that could strike without warning, and systems designed to outsmart any counterattack. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. "Status report," Alina said, her voice steady but urgent. Commander Lewis, one of Alina's trusted officers, stepped forward. "The fleet is ready, Captain. We've completed the final tests. The cloaking system works perfectly, and our weapons are calibrated for maximum efficiency. But we're still facing one problem." Alina raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Lewis hesitated before answering. "We don't know where to strike. The Galactic Council's ships are scattered across the galaxy. They could be anywhere, and their defenses are formidable. We could waste valuable time chasing after them." Alina thought for a moment. They had the power, but they needed to be smart. Time was not on their side. "Then we find their weakest link," Alina said, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "We hit them where it hurts the most, somewhere they won't expect. We have to think like humans, not like a mighty empire with overwhelming force." The officers around the room nodded, understanding the gravity of the plan. They weren't going to take down the Galactic Council with sheer firepower. They were going to outsmart them. Earth's greatest weapon was its unpredictability. "Where do you suggest we strike, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Harper, another officer in the room. Alina smiled, the glint of determination in her eyes. "We'll target the Council's communication network. If we can take that down, they'll be blind. They won't know where we are, and they won't be able to respond quickly. We hit them fast and hard, then disappear before they even realize what's happened." It was a risky plan. Taking out the Council's communication network would be dangerous, but Alina knew that this was their best shot. Without their communication lines, the Council would be crippled, and once they were vulnerable, humanity could strike again. The fleet began its journey toward their target, a massive relay station used by the Galactic Council to coordinate operations across the galaxy. The station was heavily guarded, but Alina's fleet was built to be unseen. The ships would be cloaked, able to pass right under the Council's nose. As they approached the station, Alina's heart raced. This was it. They were about to do what many thought was impossible: Humanity, with its small fleet and limited resources, was about to strike at the heart of the Council's power. With a final glance at the fleet, Alina gave the order. Prepare for launch. It's time to show them what humanity can do. The ships drifted silently into the shadows of space, cloaked and ready for action. The countdown began. Humanity's first move was in motion, and there was no turning back now. The Council's threat hung over Earth like a storm cloud, heavy and menacing. As the days passed, the tension only grew. Captain Alina Carter knew that waiting would be a mistake. Humanity had to act fast, and it had to act boldly. The question was no longer whether they could survive, but whether they could prove that humanity was not to be underestimated. In the war room of Earth's military headquarters, Alina stood at the front, addressing a room full of military leaders, engineers, and diplomats. The screens around her flickered with star maps, showing the locations of the Galactic Council's most important ships and outposts. "We're not going to sit around and wait for them to destroy us," Alina said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "We'll show them what happens when you threaten humanity." The room buzzed with uneasy excitement. Everyone knew how risky this would be. The Galactic Council was a force that no one dared to challenge. Yet, Alina had never been the kind of leader to back down from a fight. Humanity's greatest strength, she believed, was not in its weapons, but in its heart, its ability to adapt, to think outside the box, and to surprise its enemies. General Roberts, the head of Earth's defense forces, crossed his arms, his face thoughtful. "You're suggesting a preemptive strike?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Alina nodded. "Exactly. We can't wait for them to come to us. If we show them that we're not afraid to fight, we might just have a chance to turn the tide. But we need to act quickly. We need to build something that can strike before they can attack us." A low murmur filled the room. The idea of creating something new, something powerful enough to challenge the might of the Galactic Council, seemed almost impossible. But then again, humans had always done the impossible. One of the engineers, Dr. Emily Pierce, stood up from her seat, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. "We have some new tech in the works, ships, stealth systems, weapons, but we haven't fully tested them yet. Are you sure we can rely on them?" Alina looked at her. "We don't have time to wait for perfection. We'll test what we can, and if it works, we move forward. If not, we adapt." The engineers got to work immediately, pulling together every bit of advanced technology they had. Military forces began training for a strategy they had never thought they would need. Taking the fight to the Galactic Council, not with overwhelming force, but with speed and cunning. The ships were smaller, more agile, and designed to be nearly invisible to the Council's sensors. The stealth technology was humanity's secret weapon. As the days turned into weeks, the fleet took shape. It wasn't big, but it was quick. And with it, Earth's first strike capability. A small but powerful force, ready to hit the heart of the Galactic Council before they could even realize what was happening. Alina knew this was a gamble, but it was a gamble that humanity had no choice but to take. They had nothing to lose and everything to prove. The Council may have thought they could intimidate humanity, but the humans, united by their refusal to submit, were about to show that they would never bow to anyone, least of all, an arrogant alien council. With the fleet ready, Alina gave the order. Earth was about to strike back. The hum of the stealth ships filled the control rooms aboard Earth's fleet as the attack on the Galactic Council's communications network began. Captain Alina Carter stood in front of the main console, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of the massive relay station. The countdown had started, and the fate of the mission rested on a razor-thin edge. 30 seconds. Lieutenant Harper's voice broke through the tension. He was monitoring the cloaking systems, ensuring their ships stayed undetected as they closed in on the relay station. Alina's fingers tightened around the armrest of her seat. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. The gravity of the situation pressed down on her. One wrong move, one slip-up, and their entire operation could fall apart. But this was their moment, the first real strike against the Galactic Council. Humanity was finally fighting back. "Ready, Captain," Harper said, snapping Elena back to the present. She nodded. "Initiate the attack." The fleet, cloaked and almost invisible against the vast backdrop of space, descended upon the station like shadows. They moved in perfect unison, a small but deadly force. As they neared the relay station's core, Elena could feel the weight of the moment. This was their shot. If they could disable the Council's communication network, it would leave them vulnerable. A single, swift blow. The strike was quick. A wave of energy pulses shot from the fleet's ships, targeting the station's communication arrays. Sparks erupted from the surface as the pulses hit their marks, ripping through the defense shields and cutting off the Council's connection to the rest of the galaxy. For a brief moment, the only sound was the low hum of the fleet's engines. And then, Elena heard it, a chorus of alarms blaring through the comms system. It was working. The communication network was failing. "Direct hit, Captain," Lieutenant Harper reported, his voice tinged with relief. "The relay station is offline. They won't be able to contact any other ships." Elena allowed herself a small smile. This was the break they needed. But as the minutes passed, something was wrong. The silence felt too deep. The Council hadn't retaliated. "They don't know," Elena whispered. "We hit them so fast, they don't even realize what's happening." Harper's face was tense as he stared at the screen. "I'm not sure, Captain. Something doesn't feel right. We've disabled their network, but I'm picking up strange readings. It's like they're preparing something." Elena's heart skipped a beat. She had expected a response, but not like this. She quickly gave the order to the fleet. "Pull back. Get to the edge of their radar range. We can't risk being caught before we have a chance to escape." As they retreated, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they had just stirred a hornet's nest. The Galactic Council, despite its overwhelming power, was now on alert. They would come for Earth with everything they had. This was just the beginning. Back on Tarek's flagship, alarms blared. He had been busy monitoring his fleet's movements when the unexpected happened. His communication systems had been breached, and before he could respond, his entire network collapsed. Tarek's eyes widened in shock. Someone had dared to strike at the heart of his empire. His arrogance had blinded him, but now it was clear. Humanity had shown they were not to be underestimated. Tarek sat frozen in his chair, staring at the empty screen in disbelief. The Galactic Council's communication network, the very backbone of their power, was gone. It wasn't just a temporary glitch, it was a full-scale attack. For the first time in years, Tarek felt a cold sweat run down his spine. "What happened? How did this happen?" he demanded, slamming his fist onto the control panel. One of his officers, visibly shaken, rushed forward. "Sir, the communication network is down. We've lost contact with all Council ships. Someone on Earth must have attacked us. We're blind." Tarek's mind raced. How could a small, backward planet like Earth have done this? He had underestimated them. His arrogance had clouded his judgment. The humans had been underestimated for too long, and now they had struck the heart of the Council's power. The very foundation of their control was crumbling. He stood up abruptly, his mind already calculating their next move. "Get me a fleet now. We are not going to let this humiliation stand. We'll show them the full force of the Galactic Council." But Tarek's words, once filled with certainty, now felt hollow. Even as he shouted orders, doubt gnawed at him. Earth had just proven that it was capable of more than he had ever imagined. It was too late to pull back now, but he had to do something. Anything, to regain control. On Earth, Elena Carter and her team were still recovering from their successful strike. The small fleet had pulled back to the safety of deep space, where they could regroup and assess the damage they'd caused. The feeling of success hung in the air, but so did the tension. "We did it," Lieutenant Harper said, his voice full of pride. "We actually did it. The Council won't know what hit them. But Elena wasn't celebrating. She knew this was only the beginning. We've made them angry. They'll come after us with everything they have. This won't be over quickly. As the fleet drifted in space, the commanders and officers began discussing their next steps. Elena watched the stars flicker on the screens in front of her, knowing that their success had come at a high cost. They had dealt the first blow, but now they had to prepare for the Council's retaliation. Back on Tarek's flagship, things were beginning to fall apart. The Council members, once loyal to Tarek, were starting to question his leadership. The empire he had helped build was beginning to fracture. "This is an embarrassment, Tarek," said one of his fellow council members, a stern figure named Jalen. "You promised us an easy victory over Earth. Now look where we are. Our communications are shattered, and we've been outsmarted by a planet we thought was insignificant." Tarek's face flushed with anger, but he couldn't argue. He had been overconfident, and now his empire was feeling the consequences. He had thought Earth was weak, but humanity had proven to be far more resourceful and resilient than he had ever imagined. "We will crush them," Tarek growled. "We will rebuild the Council's strength and wipe Earth from existence." But deep down, Tarek knew that the situation had changed. He had underestimated the humans, and now the entire galaxy was watching to see what the Galactic Council would do next. As Tarek's flagship began to prepare for a retaliatory strike, the first signs of a new power in the galaxy were beginning to take shape. Humanity had shown the Council that it was not to be ignored, and the Council's arrogance would no longer go unchallenged. The days following Earth's successful strike on the Galactic Council's communications network were filled with anticipation and tension. Captain Elena Carter stood on the bridge of the lead ship, staring out into the vast expanse of space. The fleet had retreated for now, but they knew the Council wouldn't sit idle for long. Tarek's retaliation would come soon, and it would be powerful. "We've hit them hard, but they're not going to let this go," Elena said to her crew, her voice calm but serious. "The Council is too powerful to back down. They'll retaliate, and we need to be ready." Lieutenant Harper stepped forward, his face grim. "I've been monitoring their movements, Captain. They're gathering a fleet. It looks like they're preparing for a large-scale counterattack. We're outnumbered, and they have resources we don't. We can't match them head-on." Elena nodded. She had known this would happen. A direct confrontation with the Galactic Council's full force was impossible. They needed a different approach. "We're not going to fight them on their terms. We'll fight them on ours." She turned to the tactical display, where a holographic map of the galaxy spun slowly. "We've already proven that we can strike fast and hit hard. We've shown them that we're capable of more than they thought. But now we need to keep them guessing. We need to hit them in multiple places at once, confuse them, and force them to spread their forces thin." Harper raised an eyebrow. "A hit-and-run strategy. We'll need to be quick." "That's the idea," Elena replied. "We can't take them head-on, but we can outmaneuver them. We'll strike at their supply lines, their smaller outposts, and disrupt their reinforcements. If we can force them to fight on multiple fronts, we might just have a chance." The officers in the room exchanged uncertain glances. It was a risky plan, but it was all they had. The fleet wasn't strong enough to win a direct battle, but it was fast, agile, and clever. If they could stay one step ahead of the Council, they might be able to turn the tide. "We've got no choice," Elena said, her voice hardening. "We've already drawn their attention. Now we need to make sure they can't catch us." The orders were given. The fleet was split into smaller groups, each assigned a target. One group would strike a remote supply base, another would sabotage a communications relay, and a third would harass the Council's reinforcements, slowing them down. As the ships scattered across the galaxy, Elena watched as the screens displayed the progress of each mission. The first strike hit a supply base on the edge of Council territory. It was quick, efficient, and done before the Council could respond. The second group attacked a communications relay, cutting off another key channel for the Council. The third group, led by Lieutenant Harper, engaged a small council fleet in a hit-and-run tactic, ensuring they could escape before the council could retaliate. Back on the council flagship, Tarek was losing his patience. His fleet was spread thin, and every report from his commanders showed that Earth's tactics were proving effective. "How are they doing this?" he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "How are they always one step ahead?" Jilan, the council member who had been questioning Tarek's leadership, stepped forward. "They're not fighting the way we expected. They're using guerrilla tactics, hitting us where it hurts and disappearing before we can strike back." Tarek gritted his teeth. "This isn't over. We'll crush them. I'll make sure of it." But even as he spoke, doubt began to creep into his mind. Humanity had shown itself to be far more resourceful and resilient than he had ever imagined. And now, with every small victory Earth scored, the cracks in the Council's armor were becoming more apparent. The battle had ended. Earth's fleet had struck a decisive blow against the Galactic Council, and Tarek's flagship now lay in ruins. The once mighty Council, which had dominated the galaxy for centuries, was crumbling. The human forces, though outnumbered and outmatched in many ways, had outwitted their enemies at every turn. They had proven that even the smallest and seemingly weakest of species could change the course of history. Captain Alina Carter stood on the bridge of her ship, watching as the remains of the Council's fleet drifted through space, broken and helpless. Her heart still raced from the battle, but there was a sense of relief now that it was finally over. She had always known that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt and overcome. Today, they had proven that. "We did it," Lieutenant Harper said, his voice filled with awe. "We actually did it. We stopped them." Belinda didn't immediately respond. Her mind was still processing everything that had happened. The chaos, the tension, the victories. There had been so many moments when they had been on the edge of defeat, but each time, humanity had found a way to survive. It was no longer about winning a battle. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity would never back down. "It's over," Alina finally said, her voice steady. "But the real victory is showing the galaxy that we don't need anyone's permission to exist. Earth's strength doesn't come from our weapons. It comes from our resolve, our will to fight for what's right." The crew was silent for a moment, taking in her words. The weight of the victory had not fully sunk in. They had just changed the course of history. But there was still much to do. The Galactic Council, though defeated, would not disappear overnight. And there were many other planets out there that had witnessed the events unfold. On Tarek's flagship, his eyes were wide with disbelief as he surveyed the wreckage. His empire had fallen. His fleet was shattered. And in the end, it was the humans, those he had considered insignificant, that had destroyed everything he had worked for. Tarek sank into the chair in front of the control panel, his mind spinning with regret. How had he been so blind? He had underestimated humanity. He had thought Earth was nothing but a primitive, weak planet, unworthy of attention. But now, as he watched the destruction of his fleet, he understood the truth. Earth was not to be trifled with. The arrogance that had driven him to threaten them had been his undoing. Tarek's thoughts were interrupted when a council messenger appeared on his screen. "Council member Tarek," the voice said, "the council is in disarray. We've lost control of the galaxy. We need to regroup and rebuild. But we cannot do it without you." Tarek's eyes darkened. He could feel the weight of his failure pressing down on him. The very empire he had built was now crumbling, and he was left with nothing but the ashes of his pride. "I failed," Tarek said quietly. "I misjudged them. I thought they would bow to us, but it's clear now. Humanity is not to be underestimated." From the far reaches of the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity had shown that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire capable of burning down the mightiest empire. And now, with the Council's defeat, Earth had earned its place among the stars. As Earth's ships returned to their home planet, Alina Carter looked out over the vast expanse of space. The galaxy had just witnessed humanity's strength, and they would never forget it. The fight wasn't over, but the human spirit had been proven to be unstoppable. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Earth would never again be just a small, forgotten planet in the galaxy. Humanity had shown its power, and now the galaxy would have to reckon with them. The series of small, precise strikes against the Galactic Council's outposts were beginning to take their toll. Tarek's once proud fleet was scattered across the galaxy, stretched thin by the guerrilla tactics that Earth's forces had mastered. The Council, once a symbol of unchallenged power, was now showing signs of weakness. Captain Alina Carter stood at the center of her command room, reviewing the latest reports. The mission had been a success. The fleet had managed to damage a key supply line and cripple several smaller council stations. But even with these victories, Alina knew it wasn't enough. The council wasn't defeated yet. They were strong, and Tarek, though shaken, had not given up. "Where do we go from here, Captain?" Lieutenant Harper asked, his voice steady but filled with concern. Alina thought for a moment before replying. "We keep hitting them. We need to strike fast and make sure they can't recover. But we also need to be ready for their counterattack. Tarek won't stay on the defensive for long." As the fleet moved into position for another strike, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that the Council was on the brink of collapse. Earth had already shattered their communication network, disrupted their supply lines, and shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. And yet the Council was still a dangerous force. The fight was far from over. Back aboard Tarek's flagship, the mood was grim. The once confident council member stood in front of a large screen, his fists clenched at his sides. His fleet was scattered, and reports from his commanders were becoming increasingly troubling. Earth's fleet, though small, had managed to evade capture and continued to strike at their weakest points. "What's going on? Why can't we catch them?" Tarek demanded, his voice filled with frustration. One of his officers, still looking nervous, stepped forward. "Sir, we've been receiving reports from our outposts. The humans, they're always one step ahead. They hit us, then disappear. Our reinforcements are late, and our forces are divided. It's becoming difficult to predict their next move." Tarek slammed his fist onto the control panel in front of him. "This is unacceptable. They can't keep doing this. I will crush them. I swear it." But even as he shouted, doubt crept into his mind. The truth was, Earth had outsmarted him at every turn. He had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness, and now the Council's grip on the galaxy was starting to slip. Meanwhile, Tarek's position within the Galactic Council began to weaken. The other council members, once eager to follow his lead, were now questioning his decisions. Jilin, the council member who had once supported Tarek's leadership, stood in front of him, a stern expression on his face. "Tarek," Jilin said, his tone colder than usual, "your strategy has failed. You promised us quick victory, but instead, we are losing ground. Earth is not as weak as you claimed. We need to rethink our approach." Tarek's face flushed with anger, but he couldn't ignore the truth. The Council was losing confidence in him, and his allies were dwindling. His reputation, once untouchable, was crumbling. He had made a fatal mistake in underestimating humanity, and now the entire galaxy was watching. "I won't let them win," Tarek muttered, though his words lacked the conviction they once held. "I will not be the one to lose to a primitive species." But deep inside, Tarek knew that the Council's once unshakable authority was now hanging by a thread. Earth had proven that they could not be easily defeated, and with every passing day, humanity's strength only seemed to grow stronger. The Galactic Council was starting to unravel. Tarek's pride had brought him to this point, and now it was his own arrogance that would cost him everything. The time had come. After weeks of hit-and-run tactics and strategic strikes, the final confrontation between Earth's fleet and the Galactic Council was inevitable. Captain Alina Carter stood on the bridge of her ship, her gaze focused on the vastness of space. The stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with the beating of her heart. The humans had proven their strength, but the council was relentless. It was time to finish this. "We've done everything we can, Captain," Lieutenant Harper said, his voice low but resolute. "The council knows we've crippled them, but they're still coming after us with everything they've got." Alina nodded. The council had finally regrouped. After all the damage Earth had inflicted on their supply lines and stations, they had no choice but to send their fleet in full force. The council's retaliation would be brutal, but Alina wasn't afraid. Humanity had already faced impossible odds, and they were still standing. "This is it," Alina said quietly, her eyes scanning the command room. "We take the fight to them." The fleet was ready. The human ships were agile and fast, designed to evade and strike quickly. Alina's plan was simple: strike hard, strike fast, and disappear before the council had a chance to react. They were outnumbered, but they had one advantage: human ingenuity. As the fleet moved into position, Alina felt a sense of calm wash over her. This was humanity's chance to prove that it would never be silenced, that it would never bow to anyone, not even the mightiest empire in the galaxy. She knew this would be a fight for survival, but it was a fight they were ready for. Back aboard Tarek's flagship, the mood was tense. His fleet had finally assembled, and it was massive. Hundreds of ships filled the stars, ready to crush the humans once and for all. But Tarek's confidence had waned. The humans had outsmarted him at every turn, and now he was unsure if his forces were enough to end this. The defeat of his communication network and the sabotage of his supply lines had shaken him to the core. "Prepare for battle," Tarek ordered, his voice cold but filled with frustration. "We end this today." His fleet moved into position, and the two forces, human and council, were now on a direct collision course. The tension in space was thick. The moment of truth was finally upon them. As Earth's fleet closed in, Alina gave the order: "Engage." The first shots rang out across the black void of space. The human ships, moving in perfect formation, fired their weapons with precision, hitting council ships before they could react. The council's massive fleet, with its superior firepower, was a sight to behold, but it was slow, cumbersome, and unable to adapt quickly. The human ships darted around the council's defenses, launching waves of missiles and energy blasts that sent council ships into chaos. For a brief moment, it seemed like the battle would be over in an instant, but the council regrouped quickly, retaliating with powerful energy blasts that rocked the human ships. Alina's ship shook as a blast hit them, but they remained intact. They had to keep moving. "This is it, Captain," Lieutenant Harper said, his voice tense. "We can't keep this up much longer. We need to end this now." Alina gritted her teeth. "We won't stop until we win." With a final, desperate push, Earth's fleet launched a coordinated strike on Tarek's flagship, the heart of the Council's command. It was a risk, but Alina knew that if they could disable his flagship, they could cripple the entire fleet. As the ships launched their final attack, the Council's defenses began to falter. The flagship, once invincible, was now in serious trouble. Tarek stood on the bridge of his ship, watching in disbelief as his flagship was slowly being torn apart. "No," he shouted, slamming his fist onto the console. "This can't be happening." But it was happening. Earth had proven that they could not be defeated. The Council's once unshakable grip on the galaxy was slipping away. Tarek's arrogance had been his downfall. And now, the price of underestimating humanity was becoming clear. As the flagship finally went silent, Tarek realized the truth. The Council was no longer in control. Humanity had won.